So I'm Shelley Zales, and I am the CEO of the Female Quotient and the founder of the Girls Lounge, which is kind of a long title. But I started the Girls Lounge by accident. I say I went from a moment to a movement. I'm creating a destination for women at predominantly male-dominated conferences to connect and collaborate. And then it got so big. We've done over 65 and connected over 17,000 corporate women. And I talk about connecting, collaborating, and activating change. But to activate change, we need men. You know, women alone cannot change the game. We're 50% of the population. So I started something called the Female Quotient. And, you know, I say first came the intelligence quotient, IQ, then came the emotional quotient, EQ, now comes the female quotient, FQ. When you put women in any equation, the equation just gets better. Punto. Exclamation point, right?
Yes.
You know, here we are with two badass women that I can't wait to hear your story. Can you just give us a quick little overview, Beatriz con queso, which I just heard, Beatriz con queso with cheese. I don't know why you like that expression, but...
It's an inside joke, but we'll explain it later. But
okay, good, we want to hear.
So my name is Beatriz Acevedo, and I founded a company called Me Too. And Me Too is a digital media brand for Latino millennials. For any Latinos in the room who are millennials, you get it, you speak English. Most of you were born here, and yet there are very little options of media companies that this demographic could identify with. It was either things that came from Latin America that really spoke to an older demographic, more of your mom or your grandmother, but not to you. And in the US, in general media, there's always the caricature and the stereotype, which we all know about, but there wasn't a place that had real authentic stories about who we were. So I was very passionate as a woman and as a Latina to empower the next generation of storytellers and through content to really help diversify media and portray our community in a different and positive light. So I am very passionate about diversity, and I know we'll talk about that later, as a good business practice and not as charity. And everything that we do at Me Too is to empower this next generation of multicultural youth. So I'm super proud to work at a company that has a purpose and a big mission.
Me, I, me too, you.
Yeah, like a place for me and you. Yeah, a community.
Got you.
My name's Lisa Stone, and I, in 2005, started a company with Elisa Camerhort-Page and Jory Desjardins called Blog Her. We sold to She Knows Media in 2014 when it had reached 100 million people a month, and we had a scalable technology platform we used to work with Fortune 1000 advertisers and marketers. It was all a big accident. I started my career as a journalist 30 years ago, spent 10 years in business, politics, local economics, and transportation. And that experience really informed my transition to the internet when I had a 1-year-old in 1997 and my marriage ended. I went online in order to try to stay part of the news cycle and be a single mom, and began the process of working through a series of what became content and social media startups, Web TV, Women.com, where I was editor-in-chief and helped put 11 Hearst magazines and 2 Rodale magazines online for the first time, where I learned the sheer power of community message boards. And then when iVillage bought Women.com, I went off to Harvard to be the first internet journalist to win a Nieman Fellowship. That experience was very humbling, given that the Harvard Crimson immediately wrote an article on why this chick from Chick Media. Before I went back to Silicon Valley and began a series of distributed blog networks, one of which became Blog Her. So now I'm serving on a series of boards, and I'm completely passionate, as you are, Beatriz, about helping empower women entrepreneurs and helping us find ways to empower the voices of what are really the new normal. So I know we'll talk about that.
Just saying. Badass. Let's just give it up for two amazing women. I mean, it's pretty good. So let's just start with a simple question, right? Which is, did you always think you would be an entrepreneur as a woman? You know, you hear about how hard it is for women, you know, to be entrepreneurs. Did you choose this path? Beatrice?
I did not choose it. I come from traditional media. I grew up in Mexico City, and there was only one network if you wanted to work in media that you could work with, which is Televisa. So I worked for the network for many, many years, and one day, you'll know how many years ago when I tell you I got a fax. So I got a fax into my office that said that all of my shows were canceled, effective immediately. Oh. And I was just like, what? And nobody ever gave me an explanation at the time. I did receive a second fax saying that I was going to continue to get paid, but they were putting me, back then, if you were a woman and you sort of had a little bit of power, or they felt like you had some power, they would put you in something that they would call the refrigerator. So they need to chill you out. So at that time, a lot of the other men producers and executive producers did not like the fact that why would I interview Spielberg and not them? I worked in entertainment news. Or why would I interview Coppola and not the other guy? So they complained to the owner of the network saying I had too much power and I was so over my head and I needed to be chilled in the refrigerator.
Beatrice, were you too bossy? Did you get those?
No. I mean, of course to them, I guess. No, but it wasn't so much that I was bossy. I mean, I think even back then, and it's a cultural thing, but for any Latinas in the room, we grew up with this horrifying saying from our mothers and our grandmothers. It's the most popular saying that you tell to a little Latina girl, and it's like, calladita te ves más bonita, which means when you're quiet, you look prettier, right? So it's really not that I was a bossy woman, but they just did not like the fact that, why is a woman doing all these things in the US and not us who are the older men and more accomplished? So being an entrepreneur came by default as I lost my job. Obviously, if anybody gave me that deal today, right, put me in the refrigerator and still pay me, I would take it in a heartbeat.
It depends what else is in the refrigerator, though. I want to know who else is in there with me.
But I was 22, so I was, super feisty. I was like, the refrigerator, I quit. So that's how I started my career as an entrepreneur by default. I mean, I lived in Mexico City. My parents were in San Diego. I couldn't afford my rent anymore. So I went from... I remember going to a supermarket to buy nothing, milk, bananas, whatever, yogurt, and my American Express was just like, they're like, yeah, ma'am, your card doesn't go through. And in the same place, I was like in the cover of a magazine with like Ricky Martin, right? Like it's like, it was just that moment when you're like, wow, like from here to here in a second. And that's when I started my own independent production company in my apartment, and I just had to become an entrepreneur by default, but for sure it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
It was interesting. I don't know if you remember the article where it talked about a little girl, I think she was 8 years old, went with her mother maybe to a Target or something, and she saw all these T-shirts, and the boys' T-shirts said bold and brave, and the girls' T-shirts said pretty and cute and sweet and quiet, and it pissed her off, and she said to her mom, this just isn't fair. I want to buy the boys' T-shirts because I can be bold and brave too. So caramba.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Caramba.
Exactly.
So Lisa, what about you? Did you fall into this or did you choose? So
I think that two things happened that sort of pushed me over the edge. Definitely being a journalist on a hardcore beat was very helpful because I learned to trust data over what anyone said early and often. And then the fact that I had a divorce, which is a major failure in my eyes, and a baby, meant that I really gave no more Fs about anything. And so the
feminism?
F
feminism?
No, one of the other words. And so what's interesting about that is that in '97, and I was talking to you guys about this, the prevailing thought in Silicon Valley was women will never go online in large numbers. And I was like, that's not really how I'm feeling about this. And so I was at Web TV, which was a set-top box for $99. You could pull the internet through your television and pay a small monthly subscription fee. And I found through talking to different engineers and marketers and looking at the server data that women were buying it in the same numbers as men and adopting it in rural areas as well as urban. So I went on and happily took that job at women.com because I was like, I live for the internet. Technology is the best thing ever. Like, hand me a power drill, just like Andrea was saying earlier. It was super. And so pretty quickly, women became the largest group of internet users. We have been since 2003. So in 2005, when Kevin Drum from the Washington Monthly asked, where are the women who blog? And I was already blogging for the LA Times and had started a blog network. It was just a no-brainer to say, here we go again. Let's actually do something. But what's so interesting is that I became very immediately over, the emotional reactions I felt I received from not all, but many men in engineering, product, and investment who would have an emotional reaction to the data and experience that I had that proved that women were dramatically out using technology versus what men did. So actually, I really love it when I have an opportunity to hear someone with whom I might do business make a sweeping statement like that about women, because I immediately know whether or not I'm going to work with you. I'm not. And I urge all of you to do the same. Anyone who makes emotional assessments of real consumer markets is not someone you should be doing business with. Baloney.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, in the Girls' Lounge this weekend, we had this woman. She was so amazing. She started something called the Girl Auto Clinic. Chicanics, just to teach women how to, know everything about their car, so that it's not that emotional decision when the guy sees you and like, oh yeah, she can't do it. When I started online research, it was in 1999 and 2000, and the only people online were wealthy old men with broadband connections on at-home network, and then that shifted very quickly. And the data all supported, of course, everything that you're saying, because, you're always right. So really quite amazing. Okay, so Beatrice, let's go to you then, because we just talked about the emotional, feelings that men have when they see women are not online, or women can't do this and can't do that. What about you as a Hispanic woman? I mean, you, number one, check against you, you're a woman, diversity bucket number one. And then diversity bucket number two, you're a Hispanic woman. So, I mean, you got 2 strikes against you right out of the bat. I mean, how did you deal with that?
I mean, I've never felt it as a handicap. I mean, I've always taken it as an opportunity. I think we heard other women earlier here say how their fathers were so influential in their lives, telling them you can accomplish anything. And I was very fortunate to have a father that was the same with me. So I never felt growing up that I couldn't do anything that men could do. Now, I grew up in Mexico City, so the thought of diversity really never crossed my mind until I came to college in the US. So diversity, we were sort of all Mexicans, we're all diverse. And when I moved to the US and I started sort of hearing people talk about, oh, well, you're lucky because you don't look Mexican, I would really take it as an offense, right? Because I was like, well, what
really?
Do you think Mexicans look like? Or
did you just say what the fuck?
Like?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't
hear you.
believe.
It's just, they think they're like giving you a compliment, and it's just really mind-blowing to me. But when I started Me Too, first I owned a couple other companies before Me Too, but they were production companies. And there it was more than the diversity problem, or being a woman, it was much more the stereotypes that the execs had in their brain. So they think that Latinos look a certain way, speak a certain way, like some type of content. And whenever you were trying to prove to them that this was not true without the data, it was very hard, right? It was very, very hard. I would walk into sets where it was packed with sombreros and piñatas and dancing chiles, and we'd be like, oh my God, this is mortifying. But listen to the art director in New York, it looked really good, right? And I just couldn't have the data like I have today to say like this is wrong and this is who our audience is. But raising money as an entrepreneur, I guess I never thought about, oh my God, am I gonna have a problem because I'm a Latina or because I'm a woman or because I've never raised money in my life. My other 2 companies were not backed by anybody. I put in my own money, and this was the first time that I needed to raise a lot of money for them. So my first interview that I did was with Peter Chernin, who had a fund. And
Well, just for anyone here, Peter Chernin ran Fox Studios.
Ran Fox.
So just for anyone to put in context.
But he understood the demographic, right? Like, and it was very easy. Again, with data, you would show this is the largest group of youth in America, not just Latinos. They're the ones who consume more digital content. They're the ones who buy more online. They're the ones who share the most, and there's no media brand for them, you know? So within 10 minutes, he was like, sure, I'm in. Like, here's my money. And then other people who have joined, I mean, we have Sherry Redstone, we have WPP, we have Verizon. I mean, we have a great group of investors. And every single time I've raised 3 rounds, A, B, and C. And, you know, I never heard no. I mean, there were some other groups that were like, well, we'd rather take this one than another one. But I never felt that being a woman or a Latina did not let me raise the money. That being said,
I don't think you would ever take no for an answer.
No,
I mean, I can already tell
but
you ain't in the refrigerator.
No, I did not accept to be in the refrigerator. But you know what? I would like a nap at some point. That would be great. But you know, I didn't realize it until we closed our Series C, and I thought, is it me, or have I never seen a woman in these rooms? Like, I didn't even think about it, because I don't know, I just didn't think about it. And everyone was a guy. In a Silicon Valley firm, they had the most spectacularly beautiful Asian women bringing you the coffee and like sort of like, you know, telling you what room you were going into. Spectacularly dressed, beautiful women. And I think that was the first time where I was like, oh wow, like that's the only time I've seen a woman. But for me, I really never thought it as something that would not help me. And the first time I thought about it was I was speaking at the White House last year, and another Latina woman, it was about raising money, and another Latina woman said, wow, you know, how intimidated were you raising all this money, being a woman, a Latina, being so short? Like she also pointed out to me that I was really short. And I was like, and she also said, and having that accent. I was like, okay, well, listen, I never go into a room thinking, I have an accent, I'm short, I'm a woman, and I'm a Latina. I walk into a room and I look at all these white Jewish men, I'm married to one, so I think they're fantastic. But I walk into a room and I see them and I feel so empowered, right? I'm like, wow, I've got this, because nobody here is like me. Amen. Nobody has the skill set that I have. Nobody has my experience. Nobody has the insights into my culture and what I'm trying to solve for. So this should be an easy sell. So I'm a bit more arrogant, I guess, than other women who feel, I'm intimidated. I'm like, yes. You know.
That arrogance is confidence. I know, Lisa, you're holding on to this one.
No,
right?
I just have to applaud you, because I spend a lot of time in those venture firms now as an expert on female consumers. And I wanted to just share a little bit of data. Most of us won't raise venture capital. Most of us will bootstrap or use small business loans to grow them. But there are a couple key data points that I think should really put a little fuerza into what you're doing, okay?
A little fuerza strength.
Yes, so here's the first thing. Everyone here watches Shonda Rhimes, the great American producer, creator of Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, soon to be I'm Judging You. We all know this. She'll talk in a minute.
Talk about it.
So Ms. Rhimes basically has said numerous times, I don't say diversity. I'm producing women and people of color and LGBTQIA, and that's more than half of the population.
Wait, what's the A? I thought it was LGBTQII.
Oh,
I never heard the A part. Does anyone know what the A
Asexual.
is? Asexual.
Asexual.
Oh, that's the new one. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And she says, I am helping television look normal.
Right.
Okay? So I walk into these boardrooms and I have a whole presentation that is about what the power of normal is. So just 2 data points. Normal audiences outuse social media dramatically. So you all already probably know that women represent the majority of users on every major social media platform except for Twitter and Reddit. We won't go there. Let's look really specifically at Instagram for a minute. So only about 32% of users online, this is primarily domestic, according to Pew, use Instagram. Only 21% of whites, mostly white women, use Instagram, but 47% of African American women online use Instagram, and 38% of Latinas online use Instagram. Now add to the fact that according to Heather Keneally at Facebook, last year's We All Grow Summit, Latinas and Latinos use social media 1 out of every 4 minutes they're online. Everyone else is using it once every 5 minutes they're online. And let's add to that the fact that African American households that bring in more than $100,000 a year are 44% more likely to mention their favorite brands in social media than white households with the same incomes are. So if you're putting together an Instagram program for your brand and you are not seeking a fantastic, well-followed woman of color to lead your campaign, I urge you to reconsider. Because your campaign is going to be so much more likely to hit, stick, and be embraced if you do your own market testing right and get it right. And let's just add the fact that normal leadership teams outperform non-normal, which is to say white male-only leadership teams. According to McKinsey & Company, they did 2 series of tests, and they found that companies that had a balanced female leadership, the top quartile of those companies outperformed the bottom quartile, and this is public companies, by 15%. Higher exits, higher revenue. Fully diverse leadership teams, women and people of color, outperformed the top quartile, outperformed the bottom quartile by 35%. So get in there.
And I think just to add a little bit to that, a lot of people don't think about it. We do an accelerator program to train and mentor the next generation of diverse storytellers at Me Too, and we've started to extend it to other digital media companies in the LA area. And we talked to one of them that's very famous recently to tell them, listen, do you want to participate with us to sort of incubate this next generation of designers or directors? And they're like, no, we got it. Like we got our African American kids, we got our Latino kids, but like they have them from the Ivy League schools, and that's great. But it's really not a color thing when you think about diversity. It's what is your upbringing, right? Like they had nobody that came from a community college, and we convinced them to give us 2 spots in they had 10 internships or fellowships, and we're like, give us 2 spots for kids from community colleges, from like very poor areas in town, and let us show you what they've got. And now out of the 10 that they have, 8 are from community just because these kids have, so a Latino, 2 Latinos are not the same Latinos, right? Like the experience that I've had coming to this country on an investor visa is not the same experience that a kid from East LA or Boyle Heights has, hustling to have 2 jobs, go to college. I mean, their hunger, their passion, their gratitude to be working for these companies is very different, and that is diverse too. The diversity of the experience of where you come from and how you grew up, not just being a person of color. That's not good enough, right?
Touche, and you know what? I don't mean to make it sound as though it's just gender and race, but even getting those conversations to happen with venture capitalists in some of these boardrooms, it's like a miracle.
Yeah, first of all, diversity is not about gender, race, or age. We always forget age in the equation. It's about mindset.
Yeah.
And the more disparate, groups you have, the better. We have to wrap. So can we just do a quick lightning round? I want to hear best advice you've ever gotten or worst advice you've ever gotten. Pick one of the 2.
I'm just going to give you my advice, which is
That's great.
don't let them tell you no, and no toxic people.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'll go back to diversity. I mean, and also it's my own advice. But I think for people who think, let's give these multicultural people or these women an opportunity, I hate that. I mean, diversity as charity is the worst thing ever. So we have to sort of change that chip and make it very, very clear for people that diversity equals ROI. If you are not diverse, if your company inside does not represent what America looks like, you will never be able to solve for any problems of your future consumers. There's no way you're going to be able to thrive and to survive without diversity.
So in essence, ROE equals ROI. Return on equality equals return on investment.
Amen.
Should we wrap up with that?
We
okay,
should.
those sisters, soul sisters.
Thank
Love
you.
Awesome. Thank you.